Hello and welcome to another broadcast where we take a street epistemology video and break it down for y'all. I'm joined by some of my favorite people in the SE community. We've got Christopher here from the video podcast Atheish. We'll go around and also do a quick intro as well. Reid from Cordial Curiosity. We've got Mark from Being Reasonable. He had an amazing talk with Bruce the other day. Just an incredible conversation. So check out his podcast.
Thank you.
Everyone here probably by now knows who Juggling Lessons is. Dali is broadcasting all sorts of SE stuff. And then we are joined also by Quinn, who about a month and a half ago interviewed me in person when I was out in Los Angeles, and we had just a wonderful discussion. So thank you all for being here. And I think today we're going to go over one of my videos. It's the second conversation that I had with a guy named Caleb. One of my favorite conversation partners, because there was just such a drastic change in both of us, I think, the way that we handled ourselves. And I'm just really interested to, get your perspectives on that talk and tear it apart. Don't hold back. You're not going to hurt my feelings. The whole point of this stuff is to critique what we're doing and try to move it forward, move the ball down the field, so to speak. So let at it. Who wants to go first?
Let's make Anthony cry.
You might, but it'll probably be like more of like an emotional thing, and then like who knows, you might just totally destroy me and I'm done with SE from this point on. Who knows?
Now we know what the goals are for the evening or the afternoon. So I guess I'll start, since we'll go clockwise, I suppose. My name's Christopher Maute. So as Anthony had mentioned, I have a YouTube channel where I have shows that I kind of consider the dinner table approach to things, where my shows, there's one called Atheish, where I talk about beliefs. The whole point of all of these is to have conversations where the environment is such that you can disagree without being disagreeable, right? We can have a meeting of the minds, if you will, about these topics. So the one having to do with belief and religion is called Atheish. I also have one called Good and All, which is my prescription strength environment for when you just spend too much time online or on social media and you have a case of the fuck it alls. This is prescription strength, good and all. And this is where you should go just for good conversations about brotherhood and friendship and community and stuff like that. And then I have a music one called Flavor Tooth, where I interview musicians about the connection between music and emotions. All of these are meant to engender a quality of life theme. All of these things are important to me. They help me maintain my quality of life. So that's kind of why I do them. And so that's what my channel's about. My name's Chris.
Glad to have you here.
Cool. I guess I'll go next if I'm next in line here. So yeah, I'm Reid. Welcome, and I have a YouTube channel called Cordial Curiosity, and I've been kind of processing all of the footage that Dali and I have been doing, and I've also been doing some like big screen VR street epistemology on the side some nights, and I'm like processing all that footage now, and hopefully I'll have some more content out soon. So look forward to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. So my name is Mark Solomon. I have a podcast called Being Reasonable. It's the way I describe it. It's a long form SE session with people who agree to come talk with me. It's under the idea that more of us need to have honest and productive conversations with one another about how we formed our beliefs. And that's why I created Being Reasonable as a radio program more so than a podcast, to reach an audience who might not normally listen to this sort of programming or not seek it out, and just to encourage these types of conversations to begin that we hope that more people will have.
Sweet.
Okay.
I'm Dali, Juggling Lessons. I'm a teacher, so I'm going to teach SE, which is what I do on the Street Epistemology Discord a lot on the weekends. Just finished 3 sessions of 3 hours each yesterday and today. If you want to come learn SE with me, come to the SE Discord. Right now, we're also training co-hosts to add some events during the week. Oh, and I also make some videos. Sometimes I'm Reid's sidekick out in the park, and other times I'm interviewing people online. Whether you're a creator, whether you're would like to be SE'd, whether you'd like to learn SE, anything as long as it's on the topic of street epistemology, you're welcome to be a guest on my show and we'll live stream it. Thanks.
When you say you're a teacher, like just naturally by design, or is it a career for you as well, or what?
It's an avocation at this point. I'm retired, so I taught while I was taught professionally as part of my thing, and it's what I like doing. And teaching adults, my experience in teaching children is much smaller than my experience teaching adults. So that's where my teaching's going these days.
Cool.
Nice.
Quinn.
Hey, I'm Quinn. I have a channel called Quinn Questions. It's essentially it's kind of a baby channel, and what I'm doing at the moment is like just doing my best Anthony Magnabosco and Reid Wonder impression. Honestly. But I think the main reason I'm doing it is to learn how to talk to like conspiracy theorists in a more productive and efficient and compassionate sort of way. And I've met a couple so far, and it's been an exciting journey.
Wow.
The thing I like, I when I caught Quinn's channel, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago or 4 months ago. When did you start uploading?
About 3 months ago.
Okay. I was immediately taken aback by how calm you were, and such a good listener. You're a really good listener. So good. Glad to have you here too. So subscribe to Quinn's channel as well. We'll put all the links to that and I promise we'll do that. A lot of people say that they're going to drop the links. How many times have people told you we'll put the links in the video, and then you go to the video, like the description, it's not there.
Yeah.
So we will try our best to stick those links to our channels and various other things that we talk about today. But today we want to go over a video that I recorded back in 2018, believe it or not. I think it was December of 2018. It was a second conversation I had with a guy named Caleb, who I first met on the street in front of the Alamo in June of 2014. So I waited about 2 years since the second conversation to upload it. And is anyone curious why I waited?
Yeah.
I don't really have a good reason other than I was sort of just lazy, and I didn't really think it. Well, I knew it was a long conversation, and I knew that it would be like a kind of a major pain in the butt to edit it. And I had other stuff that was just more important that I wanted to get out, honestly. And I also didn't think that maybe we made that much progress too, for as long as it was. And then like at the, that's kind of that was my sense of it. And then I listened to it again. I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm going to go ahead and edit it. And it just turned out like the day that I released the second part of the second talk was 2 years to the day that we had met. Wow. And another thing too, like why I wanted to upload it was that it seems that both he and I grew tremendously in the 4-year span of time since the first time that we met. And I wanted, like, he gets so excoriated in the comments of the first video that I almost felt sort of obligated to show the growth that he experienced. But it really wasn't foremost in my list of priorities. But I'm glad that I eventually got around to it. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes reasoning on my part.
Yeah, this is like maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but I remember at the end of the video, like you go to pick up your really far away GoPro and it like falls and stuff. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to upload this one. You guys tell me what you think. I don't really care. That was kind of about it.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. Somebody, did you go ahead and finish? I didn't mean to walk over here.
Me because it's one of my favorite videos of yours. Like this one that we're
really?
about. Yeah. Like I just think it's so cool, the progression that happened. But
it's a lot more honest and like a longer form conversation that what you might normally see on my channel. And maybe that was one of the reasons why I decided not to upload it, because I guess I have this idea that maybe people don't want to watch a 45-minute or an hour and a half long talk. It's one of the reasons why I chopped it up. But I don't know. I'm glad that I did put it up. Somebody just messaged me on, they left a comment under that video, I think, or maybe it was a different one. What parameters do you use? What parameters do you use to decide what you're going to upload or not? And I basically just quickly type back. It's really complicated, and I don't want to get into the YouTube comments, but there's some decision making that goes on there, at least for me. I don't just upload everything.
Right. All right. Want to get into the video?
Let's do it.
We might as well. We're 10 minutes into this video here, and we haven't actually shown the clip yet. So yeah, let's get into it. All right.
Get into the video.
All right. What do we got?
Feel free to pause at any time, folks.
I want to show you a religious book that had absolutely no contradictions in it to make it true.
So we'll do right now.
Would it make it true? Can you just answer the question? Listen, I literally have a hard copy printout for another preacher that is a contradiction. But you said yourself.
What's the contradiction?
It's an act.
So here's my question. So do we have a way to actually test the taser? Do we have a way to test the faith that is so crucial, possibly, to supporting the spokes or the reasons for the belief?
Four answers popped in my head at once, and I don't think either of them. So,
do you want to repeat the question back to me?
I was going to say,
Could you?
Is there one situation, is there one thing you can point to that would say, no, this is the one thing that made me believe in God or believe in faith or lead me towards this way? You understand that? Right?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
What I'm wondering is, how can we actually test the faith and the trust and the reliance that you're putting in these reasons? How can we actually test faith to see if your confidence in those conclusions is warranted? We can test the taser, right? We can run 100 examples, and we can poll all your colleagues, and we can get some statistics on it. How can we actually test faith as you're using it as trust and reliance?
Well, for the testing,
Did you want to say something, Quinn? Or no, you said
God, the faith, the trust, the Jesus came through. It kind of goes back to the whole, like, everyone makes their own individual choice. One person can see the situation, one person the other.
You're making an individual choice.
So I was going to say a fundamental part, like you said, is someone has to just, when it's all said and done, someone has to make a choice of what's enough for them, what's not enough for them, for it to be fact. So that would be one thing. Because everyone seems to have a totally different threshold. You can use different illustrations for that easily. As far as the testing faith, I know there's some guys in my camp who are like, when you die, that'll test with you. And I'm like, stay back. That just sounds terrible. Like, whether someone believes that's true or not, I mean, yeah, but that's not a test. That's too late. That's a bad time to say, now we know kind of thing. That's
well, also, if it doesn't work the way that you think that it does, and you die,
it sucks.
We'd have no way of testing it. So yes.
Right. And so individual choice has to be part of this, which is why when it comes to my approach with people, it's really big a part for how do they individually see, receive, process information. What point do they get to that's enough? Because like a guy like me, what made me want to believe in God? And if we were to take major events in my life, yes, there's these crazy physical things I've had, the times this happened or that didn't happen, the safety aspect. I take the evidence I've heard from historical perspectives, from a little bit of science I understand and get that clicks. Like, okay, this makes sense. And I take other examples and I'm like, oh, the thing for God makes sense. You could get some guy, he's going to spend 80, 90 years of his life hearing this and so much more, and that might not be enough. Or, you know what? That simply is. Everyone seems to have this different threshold. Kind of.
This idea of a threshold is really interesting to me. It sounds like what you're saying is that for me, Caleb, the threshold I require to take it on faith that something is true or that my reasons are good and that this God is real, it meets my threshold. I'm okay taking it on faith and maybe not even having a way to test the faith. Like I might be able to test my taser and have my colleagues test this piece of equipment that we use. Are you saying that? Are we talking about standards here? Are your standards for what you'll believe on faith less than what maybe a skeptic like myself might be willing to do?
Yeah, Anthony.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to stop it because we're 4 minutes into the video. A lot of things have been covered here. I'll open it up to you because I definitely have some thoughts. I want to weigh in on like how we're standing, and then some of the things that I missed, maybe, but also what we're talking about too. But feel free to jump in and start.
I love the messengers he's bringing that you wouldn't be allowed to. The way he's describing the arguments of faith tested after life is not useful because he's bringing in things that if you were to bring them up would bring up defensiveness, but it's perfectly good. He brings them in.
Yeah,
great.
Right. He brought up the fact that like this idea that you'll be able to test it when you die, and that made him somewhat nauseous or something. Like he didn't like the idea of that, and that's something like that would usually be a question for me. Like, how do you think we might be able to test this in this lifetime? But he laid that all out. So I basically just had to repeat back what I was hearing to, you know, underscore what he had just said. Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like we actually could test it in this lifetime. It was like an opportunity.
When you first were talking to him at this point and he brought up personal choice, how are you interpreting what he was talking about? Because he does bring that up quite a bit.
I know he brings it up a lot. And okay, so there's a couple ways you can think when somebody says, I'm choosing to believe it, usually the atheist will say, or like the AXP type of response would be, well, we don't choose our beliefs. Can you choose to fly off this building? So I could have gone that way. And probably in hindsight, I think I should have explored this idea of him making a choice. Do you care if the choice that you're making is factually true or not? That is the $1 million question that should have been asked that never was. But he kept also talking about standards and thresholds, which really does tie into his choice. Like, he has a certain standard that he's willing to accept. And if it meets that threshold, then he'll choose to believe that it's true. So I decided, I guess, like, I don't want to get hung up on whether he's choosing the belief or he's forming it. And then after the fact, he's saying that he chose it. It was more important for me to focus on the standard that he's going by to determine if he's going to choose it or not.
Yeah, I think it's good to have charity with the word choose. It's really threshold standards. Does the belief have certain evidence that meets his threshold, and therefore he's kind of forced into believing it based on his standards? And it's not really, maybe not so much about choice literally, it's just his wording.
Yeah, he's accepting it because it meets some sort of standard or threshold that he's established. So that's why I was like, I don't want you to get too hung up on choice. And if you look at the comments under that video, there's probably at least 5 that say, you can't choose your beliefs. I just didn't think that would be a productive way to go, but maybe it would have been. I don't know.
Maybe.
I also think his word choice kind of logicked him into some corners that I don't think he was ready to cash out. And, you know, it was a casual conversation. I just don't think that he's thought about these concepts enough to articulate them. Like, for instance, and you can disagree with me on this, but my impression of what he was talking about, it almost sounded like he was dancing around. He wanted to rely on qualitative data, but he was using quantitative language, right? As soon as you're talking about a threshold or a lineman or a criteria to be crossed, it almost sounds more quantitative in language. And I think that changes the landscape of how you can be logicked into certain corners, right? So I thought that was, so that was an impression that I got, that he seemed to be leaning towards trying to talk about qualitative things, or a distinction between qualitative and quantitative, and just not having the language or concepts to spin that, to shake that loose. Does anyone have any opinions about that?
Well, anyone? Well, I had a thought kind of related to the standards and the thresholds a little bit, that this is an individual that was probably raised with the belief. He was homeschooled to a certain degree and kept in a relatively religious, cloistered upbringing, it seemed. And for him to go to that, from that to, you know what, it's really just coming down to what people are willing to put up with and believe. That is big. Like, that journey itself, we probably shouldn't diminish that in his mind. That's probably a tremendous growth for him to go from that to, you know, from what he was to that. So, but like, when we look at it, we're like, well, you don't choose your beliefs, and what's the quality of your threshold? He may not have been ready for that kind of discussion, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Little steps.
Little
steps are much easier to not get pulled back on. If you take too big a bite, you lose ground.
Right. So maybe in hindsight, I should have recognized that I think at one point I said, well, you really have grown, but it was sort of after the fact. But it probably would have been useful here to say, now this is really markedly different from the last time that we talked. And is this something that you would have said 4 years ago? I just saw you wince, Dali.
Pine Creek would. Yeah, that's a Pine Creek spike the ball in the end zone. Hey, that's a lot different than you used to think. It's like, look out! Don't call out how much they've changed.
Oh, really? Oh no, I think that's useful. I think it's. I don't know. What do you think, Marcus? I think it would be useful to point out that you've noticed growth in your conversation partner. Even if you might be mistaken, it could be a good discussion point.
Yeah, you get a lot of cred if you do that. I mean, if they have made growth, I mean, because you're reinforcing positive change, and I think that that's always good.
Yeah, I think it's sensitive, but there is certainly a way to reinforce it in a way that doesn't sound leveraging.
Right. Like, don't do it to ultracast them in a role that they're not.
Yeah.
Like, don't say it because you want him to think that he grew. Just be honest. Like, it seems like you really grew. I don't think that this is a position that you would have held 4 years ago. I would do it that way. Just be honest with him.
When you contacted him to come back on your channel, what was his? Was he like, "Oh yeah, let's do it," or was he hesitant, reluctant? I mean, what was kind of how
it was? It was 2 years ago. I don't remember needing to cajole him or twist his arm to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I emailed him. A day later, he emailed back, and we were working out a location, and he picked that location. You recognize? I've never been there before. Now,
yeah, because why not pick a bowling alley, right? I mean,
it would have been quieter, maybe. And he talks so damn low too. It's like, oh, this is what's happening here.
Yeah.
About that noise, there's a relatively persistent somebody slamming on an expansion grate, like right next to where you're standing at the edge of that bridge.
Yes.
And it shakes the local camera. But I also noticed that it seems to also shake the wide angle camera.
Yeah, I noticed.
What's your point? No. Here's the funny thing: the camera that was on the bridge didn't shake either when that threshold was banged on. So I added that as an emphasis because we were talking about standards and thresholds, and that was a threshold. So I thought I'm going to drive home this point every time we mention the word threshold, or somebody comes close to touching that threshold, I'm going to put the bang noise. And half the time I had to, hey, kitty cat. Half the time I had to add the bang.
Some of the bang noise was Foleyed back in.
Most people stepped over the threshold because I think they saw us recording and they'd been there before and they didn't want to bug us.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's fun.
Like the dramatic effect. I think it actually is helpful.
Yeah.
I was wondering maybe if I overdid it, but I haven't seen anybody complaining about it.
No.
Mm-hmm. I want to keep going.
Oh.
If you want to say something, just wave.
Can any one of us pause it? Because when I hovered over it, I wasn't able to stop it last time.
No, I have to pause it. So just
okay, so we'll raise our hands. Yeah.
Like I said, I think everyone has just a different standard. That's not for me to understand. If we use the standard, what are the thresholds?
Yeah, I'm interested in your standard. I'm interested in your threshold.
For me, I mean, like I said, there's been so many situations in my life or the things I've seen that I don't know what that magical point was that made me go, oh, this works. I can point to, I guess, defining moments in the same way where you probably had these significant moments where it's like, oh, I do not believe there's this because I saw this happen. I observed this. I heard this. I understood. I probably have just the same where it's like, I see this, and it's because we mentioned a few earlier, like there has to be a God that orchestrated this, who designed this. And that just comes to a personal choice or a personal standard or some threshold or something in our heart, which the Bible side of things or the Christian side of things or whatever you would really argue that that's a decision between what is right and what is wrong up against God's character and making those choices.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess, I mean, and I really just feel this way that everyone has a choice. I feel like everyone, they're going to be accountable for their choices. But I'm getting somewhere, so don't get hung up on too fast. I believe God does give like the 10 Commandments. God gives a lot of principles in his word. This is how I want things to be. This is reflecting my character. This is right or wrong. But I know people will talk about, well, when does someone know what is right? When is that age of accountability kind of thing? I don't know if you've heard that reference, but.
So this immediately gives me, a connection to the last chapter of How to Have Impossible Conversations and seeing yourself as a good person because you believe something, and the moral epistemology of it. He's bringing up character. He's bringing up this choice relating to accountability. It's a very moral idea right here.
I have a question for Anthony. Like, he keeps talking about, I think this threshold concept that he's bringing up is like a really central point to maybe the whole conversation, or at least like the whole second half. I'm a bit confused, or I think maybe you guys might be having a different idea on what the threshold is. Like, is the threshold like a threshold of evidence before you can believe something? Is that what he's talking about?
Yes, I think so.
He makes it sound like that.
And so
to me,
is he explicit? This is the part I'm confused about. Is he explicitly saying about himself that he has a lower threshold than you?
No, I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have verbalized and said he has a lower one. I think he would say mine is just different than yours.
Exactly.
I would probably say that it was lower, and I think there's a point here where I try to acknowledge that slightly and try to, like, I'm not putting myself above you or anything. However, I am wondering about the quality of your threshold or something. But yeah, I think he's saying, listen, everyone has to determine what their threshold is, and I just determined mine. So back off.
When he talks about choice, he sometimes flip-flops between the choice has been made for him in a way, and then sometimes he talks about it as personal responsibility. So I found that really confused things for me. Like, just when I thought I had a grasp on what he meant by choice, he'd start talking about how God made these commandments. And then all of a sudden I'm a little confused about, like, okay, so did he make that choice for you? Or, okay. And then also, like, he doesn't account for, like, just being enculturated in a belief in anything that he's saying. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, just being born and raised a Christian, right? It's very difficult to post hoc determine the points at which you chose to, have the belief that you do. So I think a combination of those things kind of made this part of the conversation confusing for me. Is he saying that he is making that choice? Because when he talks about the thresholds, that's the inference to me. Because he's talking about thresholds, he's making that choice when things pass that threshold, right? I think that's a logical inference. But then he kind of changes the way he uses the terms choice, and I kind of like, all right. So again, not everyone has to have the most amazing way to articulate these complex topics, right? Especially, not doing them regularly. So, but just as from an observer, that point, this part was a little confusing to me for those reasons.
Yeah. And I'm getting the vibe that it's a moral choice rather than an epistemic choice based on this past minute or so of what he said. So that's kind of like, these are connected. It's really not about epistemology. It's about being a good person and how this belief helps him see himself as a good person. And
see, I didn't get much of a morality vibe in this talk with him at all. Like, I thought, like, several times I thought we were talking about the standards and the thresholds and the choices he was making to determine that that's a good reason for thinking God is real. Because in my mind, we're trying to assess how you concluded God is real. But when it goes back to him, he's concluded that God is real, and then he's talking about all these different standards based on his mindset that God is real. Like, we were on different levels. I think I was trying to go, like, how did you determine that this God is real? And I think he was, like I said, like, going with the assumption that it was. But I don't know. I didn't really get much of a sense like he thought he was a good person or could only be a good person if he thought that the God was real. Is that what you were saying, Reid? You think that was the case?
I think so. It is a little bit like that. Let's back it up a bit and re-listen.
Okay. Bit. Yeah, maybe I missed it.
God does give, like, the 10 commandments, and God gives a lot of principles, and they're going to be accountable for their choices. But I also, and I'm getting some, so don't get hung up on too fast. I believe God does give, like, the 10 commandments, and God gives a lot of principles in his word. This is how I want things to be. This is reflecting my character. This is right or wrong. But I know people will talk about, well, when does someone know what is right or wrong? When is that age of accountability kind of
right or wrong? Okay.
I don't know if you've heard that reference, and I hear people argue about that one all day long. It's this time, it's this age, it's this age. And so, but from reading the Bible, God seems to hold people accountable for, yes, what he's put in his word, but God seems to understand, well, this is Caleb's life. He is in the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, whatever century we're in, millennials. I don't know. We're here in this century, and this is where I want him. This is the day and age I want him. This is the situations he's going to be up against.
So it's a test. This life is a test to test your moral character, to see if you'll choose God, to see if you'll get into heaven. That's what I'm hearing.
But see, I'm stuck on, how did you determine that this God is real? What standards are you using to accept the evidence that you think that you have?
Mhm.
And he, like I said, I think he's already going with the assumption that the God is real, and then there's all these dictates from the God as far as how you should behave and act, and because he mentions the 10 Commandments, but I don't know. What was that, Christopher? Was that bread or something? What was?
I just had a loaf of banana bread. That's why I had to turn my camera off. But I wanted everyone to be able to see this.
I smell. Yeah, there's a little.
Smell it, right? It's good.
Good. Can I just point out something here too? Somebody asked me, like, "Oh, did someone want to talk about the morality aspect of it, or no?"
I think we got it.
Okay, I'll save
Not
it for later.
specifically, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm not sure if he said it yet, but I noticed a thought terminating cliche in his thinking. I'm calling this one "at the end of the day," and I think he actually says that. At the end of the day, you have to make a choice, and it's leaping to a conclusion. It's the statement that at some point you have to stop thinking about it and just make a choice. And that's the threshold that he tells you about.
Do you have to make a choice? That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Yeah. So that could have been another avenue to explore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, he has technology and he has this and this and this, but man, his life is also super busy, and he can now get run over by a car these days. I mean, this is how his experience would work. You could take a guy 1,000 years before, during the early medieval ages kind of thing, and he's not going to get run over by a car, maybe a cart. He maybe knows how to read. It just depends where he's at. And you take all these guys, different situations, and I feel like, yeah, God still has his word. God still has this is right or wrong. But I also feel like when God's going to say, hey, this is what's going on in your life, you might need 30 years before you get here. So for some other guys, God's like, you know what? You're going to get here in about 5 years, this understanding of me. Mm-hmm. When it's all said and done, I still feel like people have a choice in the things God does. Ultimately, you're going to have a choice which way you want to go. God's going to let you make that choice. But
right there, God's going to let you make the choice. No, I want to decide how you chose that your evidence is good enough to think God is real. That's giving you the choice. So yeah, I think we were on different pages there.
Well, I was just confused about what he was saying.
Well, he doesn't also talk like 10 minutes straight here, I think, or 8 minutes. It was really hard to stand there and just let him go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the thread of continuity that I'm hearing is he's saying, throughout historical time, God is a constant, right? And then depending on the cultural changes through those times, God's standards stay the same. So regardless of technology, he still has these standards. And so I don't know what the point was that he brought that up, but that was the analogy that I was getting out of it. And then he even personalized it. Instead of comparing generations across centuries, he compared within somebody's life. It might take you 30 years to get to the point, I'm assuming, where your threshold is met and you believe in God. And some people, it only takes 5 years to, I'm trying to make it consistent with things he had said before. So those were the analogies that I was hearing, but I don't know towards what end he was bringing them up.
That was my understanding too, that he was saying that for some people it doesn't happen right away, and for some people it takes 30 years. Mm-hmm. Which then I think I build off of that with a question, if I'm not mistaken, after this. What do you think, Quinn? Are you able to hear us and talk?
Sorry.
You move location, so just make sure.
Yeah. People keep calling me and I'm on my phone, so I keep having to jump back in at random times, but I'm
popular.
So popular
guy.
But I'm noticing more and more what Dali's saying. Like he says, at the end of the day, ultimately, he said another phrase, like when it's all said and done, it's just like he keeps sort of just like skipping to the end. And there's this point, I think, which could have been worthy of exploration, like you said, which is, do we have to make that choice?
Yeah.
But yeah.
But bottom line, it sounds like he's saying God gave you all this information, and it just takes longer for some people to realize that it's good enough to think that he's real. I think that's everything that he's saying right there. But damn, it'd be nice to have him on. We can actually talk to him. So Caleb, if you're watching, you're more than welcome to join us. Just send me an email.
I think he's just really focused on an afterlife, eternal salvation. This life is a test. Everyone's eventually going to have the choice, and the choice is the test for salvation, and that's his main focus around this topic of God entirely, and nothing about epistemology. It's about making sure everybody has this option of a choice, and that is the main thing when talking about God.
Isn't there a branch of Christianity that has that idea that it's really not your fault if you don't believe it? It's sort of, is it Calvinism? There's a flavor maybe of Calvinism that.
Yeah, he's not a Calvinist.
If you're not elect,
you don't think that he is?
There it is.
I sound like he was talking in Calvinistic language there.
He's saying you need to do something. You need to make the choice. It's not God who selected you and predestined you. It's like this life is a big deal.
But he's saying that you can't make the choice until you're ready to make it, which would make me think that like it's sort of God's master plan or something.
Did he say God will let you make that choice? Is that his words?
No.
I think it was.
I'll have to rewind it. I think he did say something along those lines. Because I remember piping up like, yeah, you just said it. So yeah, I think he did.
So if you make the correct choice, then that's God. And if you don't make the correct choice in whatever time frame, that's God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was the
heads I win, tails you lose? It sounds like my Italian mother. You know, she'll remind me of what needs to happen, and they go, "I'm sure you make the right choice."
All right, let's keep going. See what happens.
Experience, the time we live, family, and all these different things. I don't feel like it's my place to get onto somebody's case. It might take them 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years longer than me to get this point. And who am I to get onto them? Because I'm not in their shoes. I'm not seeing their situations.
God has a plan for everyone. Who am I to force them to make it, make them quickly get to that choice and make the right choice? I think.
Which again, I don't think that's something he would have said 4 years ago. I think, I don't know, but maybe.
I feel like it's the same God, but it's kind of like, you get a parent.
Before we get into the example, is it conceivable that what a person might need to do is lower their threshold where they'll be willing to take it on faith that these things are actually happening because of God? Is that what kind of you're saying? Like, listen, whether you have to wait 30 years or it happens in 5 years, what is that person actually waiting for? Do they have to come to the realization that I can take it on faith that this is true? That I can take it on faith that these are good reasons? That I can take it on faith that those reasons really do justify the claim that a God is real?
It kind of goes to the whole personal choice. And I think it goes back to that personal choice.
You make you said personal choice a lot.
Personal chance, because I really feel like for a lot of people, it's their personal choice for whatever XYZ reasons is.
Are you making a personal choice to set your threshold at a level where you'll take it on faith that these justifications warrant a high degree of confidence that your God is real?
Yeah. Tear me apart. That's a really long question. I know that, but
well, I also think that you did a good job in reframing the way you address the threshold, because the initial language of lowering threshold is automatically, from my perspective, a leveraging. It just lands as a leveraging move. Oh, so you're going to lower things, right? So, but then when you got back around to it, you were a lot more neutral about it, and I thought that was a good turnaround, especially in real time, where you're just like, oh, well, the threshold varies. Right, you should change your threshold, and you kind of left the direction up for grabs. So I thought that was good. But it does seem like you're having two different conversations. Like that, he was so confused when you brought it back to justified beliefs or warranted beliefs.
Yeah. By the way, don't use warranted. Try to use justified. A lot of people don't know what the fuck warranted means. So go with justified. That. Pro tip.
Same with justified for some people too.
Oh, justified is what's even a better word? Supported or something.
Okay.
I have a habit I've copied from you that I am trying to fix. When I say a really long question, I need to end on a question, end up in tone as opposed to down. I got to put the question mark on the end of it. But if it's a really long one, I forget to do that.
This is really interesting because I used to end my sentences on an up point. And I've intentionally over the years been trying to go on a down point.
Prismatic envelope, right? It's Charlie Brown's teacher.
I just think it's like an annoying speech effect. But if you let that bleed into your questions, it could be confusing because people are not sure that you're asking a question or not. Yeah.
Right.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
Do you think he's using personal choice when he talks about it as a kind of an escape hatch? Like, I can still get, I can still believe what I want to believe, and it's true because, hey, it's personal choice, and what are you going to say to that? Really?
That's what I was thinking.
And you're a liberal, you have to give him that, right?
Well, see, that's what I was thinking. I thought he was going relativistic here.
Right.
Everybody can just make up whatever choice that they want, and that's good enough. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me to let these people running around with their own personal choices of what's true. So I think I was, probably thinking he's going relativistic here. This is almost like it's a true for me type of answer, but he didn't phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A high degree of confidence that your God is real.
Because it would look from your personal choices, I'm guessing you would look at my situation and be like, holy cow, it took barely XYZ to make him believe in a God. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do with this person? This is ridiculous. But in the same, you can just spin it around that I could look at the same way and be like, I don't see how this isn't adding up kind of thing. And that's where, like I said, I think it gets to the personal choice. How can one person perceive this as evidence,
right,
and the other person believe this isn't it?
I can actually probably answer that from my perspective, where if you said, listen, Anthony, you can have peace in heaven and Jesus will be there and he'll be your savior and open up your heart and he'll wash away your sins and all this stuff. However, in order for you to be sure that the reasons that you think are good reasons for concluding that this is all true, is you need to trust it and take it on faith and rely on it. And you don't actually have a way to test it. We can't test that taser. You just need to take it on faith. You need to trust that it's the case. And I actually have a way of demonstrating that this trust maybe is not reliable. Can you understand why maybe a skeptic like myself might not be willing to go on that journey with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's really confused.
You think so?
Because I look at situations I've been in, it's like, God gave me, okay, for another example, personal sake, there's been times I'm just sitting there in my car, I feel something in my head saying, you need to look behind you. And there's the guy, he has the gun. All right, it's time to deal with business. I've had times where there was no outside anything going on that could, some people, that was instinct. Well, it gave me the instinct to know that something wasn't right with my surroundings. I've had times where I'm walking through an alleyway and something's telling me, time to go right turn, take a right turn. There's the guy, there's the suspect just standing there. He was just standing there. He wasn't making any noise. He wasn't making sense. There's nothing in my head that would tell me to do that. Nothing biological that would say, hey, give me a heads up there. I've had enough situations like, I feel like there's something over us, something watching us, giving us heads up. And some people would argue in the camp of if you're, because typically you look through scripture, God, not typically.
Before we get into the scripture, and I think what you're saying is that you would take it on faith. That's actually the God that made those things happen, that made you look up, that made you look into your rear view mirror.
It just comes down to a personal choice. I believe this or now I'm going to believe that. Because I feel like those are situations, I tested my faith, my trust. Like I said, go back to these situations and experiences that I'm up against. I feel like they were a test of faith.
I think he's using faith as the noun, as like the belief set. It's like the belief itself rather than the way of coming to believe.
Yeah, I think so.
What would be a situation, a personal experience, where it would actually show that your faith was not warranted, that faith can't be relied on to conclude that these things are true?
And now you're going back to the verb usage or the methodology usage.
Wait, what's the difference?
There's like faith as a way to know and faith as like a synonym for just the belief itself, Christianity.
Yeah.
God is real.
I believe my faith by faith. Those are a noun and a verb in the same sentence.
However, that's faith is really a problematic word, because earlier, I'm pretty sure, maybe it may have been in the first half of this second talk, where we literally talk about, well, how can you tell that this is real? And that's when he mentions faith. And then he gives the example of the taser, and then we lead to testing. But then like halfway through, then it's like, well, I'm not using faith as a method in this one sentence. It's referring to the belief that I have that this is true. Where I'm thinking, no, we're talking about methodology, and can we test it? And is it rigorous? And should we be confident that this is true because we're taking it on faith? So I guess the learning point, what's the learning point here? What advice should we have for people who are learning street epistemology? Let's give them some teaching moments here. What do you think?
Just whenever you hear it, clarify the usage. Is this what you mean? Use it in a different sentence or a different. Just clarify. Make sure it is the usage that you're hearing.
Yeah.
And also, I think first steps are just being mindful of where the conversation is going. And if you see it deviating in such a way that a word is being equivocated in a way that's not moving forward the conversation productively, at least from your perspective, then bring it back to that. Also, in this particular example, like it seems like by analogy, you were talking about faith as an instrument, right? And instruments need to be reliable and valid. And so I don't know if that analogy would have worked for this person in particular, but if there were if you had in your pocket preloaded analogies of I think we're getting a little off course. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put faith under the microscope to determine how good of an instrument it is to use for any future decisions. I'm not talking, something like that, some clarifying bit. Yeah. It doesn't have to be as analytic as I just was.
However, when you can take faith and say that's the decision, you can equate it with the decision that you've made. It makes it so murky to explore it in this approach.
He did bring
I would end up replacing a term once. Go ahead.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe it would have been useful to say, listen, you know what? From this point on, I'm not going to use the word faith. I'm going to use the word trust. And when I say trust, it also encompasses faith. But because faith can often be confused with the belief itself, I'm going to propose that we use trust. Are you amenable to that? What do you think? And then we try to use that verb from that point on. And if he mentions faith, I can say, now, are you talking about the trust faith or the belief faith?
Right. And I think as faith as an instrument, he brought up the analogy of the taser and compared faith to that.
Exactly. So, that's why I kept thinking, no, he's tracking with me, because he keeps bringing up the real world examples of the bridge and the taser. So I'm like, no, he's tracking. But now as I watch it back 2.5 years later, it becomes more evident. This is the other thing too. It's so easy to and I love the feedback, but when you're in the moment, and there's a lot of shit going on, and it is what it is. It is what it is. But hopefully, you can learn from it.
Yeah. What do you think? He used the example of going down the alley, and there's many times where, I don't know why I took that right, and I took that right, and I ended up in a good place. So there's something going on there. I mean, what do you think his purpose of giving you that?
I think he was trying to demonstrate that the belief provides him with value. He survived harm. What did he say? What was the thing? The biggest spoke of his wheel was personal protection. Yeah. I think that came up in the first talk. Right. So to answer your question, I think he's bringing it up to show no, this belief has served me well.
Yes. And so at that point, I was wondering, and this is a really delicate question, given what he does for a living, and if he had a buddy who, is on the force with him, and that buddy has the similar belief as he has, and he went down the blind alley, and of course, this would be a terrible thing, and something actually happened to him. Mm-hmm. What do we say then about his belief?
I would imagine he would say, well, that was just that guy's time. And he wouldn't charitably, forgive me, Caleb here, but I don't think that he would be charitable in his interpretation and say, oh, this is a good reason to cause me to question this. I think he would say, it must have been my buddy's time.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he would have probably said something like that.
I think you're right.
So when I have a situation I can think of, because it would go off to the personal choice. You get the classic illustration, there's no atheists in foxholes. Yes, I know plenty of atheists in foxholes kind of thing. It's such the easy example because it happened to so many people who came from these wars. They see it. You get one guy's like, I see all this pain and suffering. There is no God. You see the other person's like, shoot, there has to be something more than this. If this is all there is, there must be something else out there, because this can't be all there is to it. And they both made a personal choice. They both saw the evidence and they perceived it their own way.
Mm-hmm.
They both had to make a personal choice, just using that word on, this is what I'm presented with, how I'm going to take this. And I guess I see that work a lot when you get into things like crime scenes. One person believes it's suicide, one person believes it's a murder. Same evidence, you're seeing the same exact thing, you're seeing the same photos, you're seeing the same things, you're talking to the same suspects, but you get one person, for whatever reason, their personal experiences, they see the situation and they take it totally different. And I see that work all the time.
How would you, Caleb, be able to tell that your faith in this conclusion and in these justifications is misplaced? Do you have a way of figuring it out?
I think he's lost.
I guess there'd be just like years of experience to work against, because we talk to those contradictions in the Bible. We talk about the miracles. We talk about what I see in science.
Here's my
There'd
thing.
be a lot of that.
Here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I'm noticing is that it seems like faith for you, when it comes to God existing, only works in one way. It's confirming the test. It's saying, yep, that faith was good. It brought me to this conclusion. My God is real. And you don't have a way of determining what a failed application of faith might look like when it comes to the God. We have these great examples of the taser.
Yep.
This is just my favorite part of the interview. I think this really causes him to think about his belief. What comes next, I think he really considers what Anthony is telling him, and he's really thinking about it. And I just love this part. I really do.
Where it would fail, like, oh, my trust was misplaced in this device. Well, here's the disconnect that I'm struggling to understand is,
put it on to you. Yep.
If faith is always leading a person to conclude that.
Had you read How to Have Impossible Conversations at this point?
I don't know. So when did Pete's book come out? 2019, 2020?
Yeah. 2019.
He did ask me to proofread it. So I'll have to look back at the emails to see like when I first started poking through it. It is conceivable that I read the section about putting the burden on yourself and I was implementing it here.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I just creatively came up with that on my own, but it's quite possible that I read it and I was actually trying to practice it here.
Yeah, that'd be good to know. That'd be fun. Yeah, I'd love to know that.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
Here's the disconnect that I'm struggling to understand is, if faith is always leading a person to conclude that what they think is true is really true, how on earth could we actually test it?
All right, let's take a crazy scenario then. So if you were to take, do you believe in demons, angels, anything along those lines?
No.
So for a person then to have a confrontation with like an angel or a demon or something like that, and God would miraculously intervene, situation sound far-fetched to you? Not far-fetched? You be honest. I can take it.
I'm being completely honest with you.
I think he's bringing up the concept of background knowledge, and like and adjusting where your default, epistemic and Bayesian priors should be, and if you come across something based on your background knowledge, it would be at a different level. I think that's what he's trying to get at.
Say it again.
I don't know what he's going here, honestly.
I think he's saying if you believe in angels and demons, your priors are going to be different than people who don't believe in angels and demons. And if you come across a situation, your hypothesis that this was influenced by angels and demons is going to be different.
Oh, yeah. I think that's where he's going with that. But of course, I'm like, well, hold on a second. How did you conclude that demons and angels are real? So he's up here, and I'm like, no, we first need to establish that this is all true. But I was consuming some of that capital that we talked about in the conversation with Doug, the ledger. Did you notice, like, I quickly, like, do you believe in that? I'm like, no. And then like, to be honest with you, no, I don't think angels and demons are real. Like I just very bluntly put that out there. And now in hindsight,
and-
the conversation that we had, I'm like, I was allowed to do that, I guess, socially because of all the rapport building that happened prior, I think.
Yeah. And you cut him off and interrupted him and got away with it just fine.
You can do it. You just got to be careful about it.
Yeah.
From the second I walked up to here, no, I think that's pretty far-fetched.
Okay. So if someone were to believe that was a test of their faith, how God would bail them out in a situation, you would look at that test as being completely illegitimate from the get-go.
Hang on.
Far-fetched. To be honest, I can take it.
I'm being completely honest with you from the second I walked up to here. No, I think that's pretty far-fetched.
Okay. So if someone were to believe that was a test of their
I actually
faith,
like
how
that
God
line,
would bail them
and that
out
was
in a
true.
situation.
Yeah.
What was that?
I was just saying, I when I was listening to that later, I'm like, damn, that was good. Like, yeah, I've been straightforward with you from the very start.
Yeah, I like
Whether
that.
he believes me or not, I don't know, but it really was the case. Like, I'm not bullshitting him. I'll let him know where I stand on anything that he says and be as upfront and transparent as I can.
You would look at that test as being completely illegitimate from the get-go. That person has made a personal choice that they believe in XYZ things because of based on facts. They get rescued from that situation, they get saved from the situation, but you don't even believe the test as well. So it's kind of hard to argue this person's personal choice being invalid if you don't even believe their tests are valid. Are you tracking with that? Here to take.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
Get saved from the situation. So I think it's like if someone who believes in angels and demons gets into a sticky situation because of their belief, because of their, belief, then God would look favorable on them and save them from the situation. And this has something to do with testing, whether or not.
See, I think we're talking past each other on what a test is. I think he's saying God puts these events in your life as a test. And I'm thinking, no, like a test should be able to reveal whether or not we're believing in something that's real or not. So test is another one of those tricky words that you need to really be careful about when you talk with people. A lot of religious people will think that they're being put to the test by their God. So this, encountering an angel or a demon is actually a test by the God. When I'm thinking, no, like how could we determine that that's all true?
Objective test.
How can God test people? Let's say God tests people all the time, but how do we as humans test this claim that a God exists?
Yeah. So I think
humans.
It probably could have been really better. Like, and maybe it came up like during, because it's so confusing because I think we're on the right track because we keep talking about tasers and real world things that we use, trust in you could apply faith in those situations. And like, how do you test that it's true? But maybe Caleb is so entrenched in the Christianese language where certain words like test and faith, and they have these deeper meanings that I'm not picking up on. And because I'm not picking up on it, I think he's tracking with what my usage of those words are.
Yep. So yeah, just gotta listen and clarify and repeat back and confirm.
Test is another baggage word that you have to unpack.
Yeah. Are you tracking with that? Here to take.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
if I don't accept the premise that there are angels and demons, I have no way of testing the claim that a God is real.
if someone was to say, "Hey, God saved me from I bumped into a demon in an alley or something like that," for the record, I had the situation. But if you have someone, "Hey, I bumped into a demon in an alley. Jesus literally popped out, slapped the demon off. Good, I'm safe, I'm fine." That was a test. I pray for Jesus to help me, save me. You would look at that situation, and I'm guessing, and correct me, you would say that's an illegitimate test. There's a lot of other things I'm wondering now. There's situations we bump into and we look at, and we have to. Some people don't believe the test is even. If we're going to use the testing we're referring to, they wouldn't even believe that test of faith is even valid because they don't believe in half of the ingredients for the test or the methods for this or methods for that. Because one thing I haven't brought up a lot, because I don't see how I really could bring it up a lot, is prayer. Because if you don't believe that there's any kind of spiritual force, then I don't know how you would look at prayers. And I look at prayers being answered or not answered as a considerable thing. And so, but if you don't even believe a prayer is valid,
would I require faith to conclude that prayers work?
if personally feel like it's a faith, then yes. And so that's why it's kind of hard to
See, this is the dilemma that I find myself, is that these things all keep coming down to faith. And if we don't have a way to actually test faith in this life, because in your view, it seems like, hey, if I rely on these reasons, my God is real. It doesn't seem like there's a way to tell that the faith was misplaced when it comes to concluding that gods are real.
Because we can easily spin that around on evolution. How do you test out evolution being real? We can't see it.
boy.
We can't observe it.
So when that topic comes up, I'm like, oh no, that's the wrong direction, right? But it could be useful. He could be revealing an example that could help further the conversation. So give it a little, let it breathe. You open up a bottle of wine, let it breathe a little bit, see where it goes. Where did Quinn go, by the way? I noticed he's gone.
I think you got another call.
It's too popular, man.
All his friends.
It comes to concluding that gods are real.
Because we can easily spin that around on evolution. How do you test out evolution being real? We can't see it. We can't observe it.
Not tests.
A dog gave birth to a dog.
See, can we pause it?
Now he's using text correctly.
Yes. This is why I keep getting baffled, because he's like, it's like dangling something in front of a street epistemologist. Like, yes, I understand what testing is, but no, I mean it like, no, God is testing you when he puts a demon in your path. No. And then he brings up evolution. And I think, oh boy, where are we going? But then he's on track again.
Yeah. Testing evolution. He's using testing appropriately. Testing faith, he's taking as like having confrontations with the demon and asking Jesus for help in that, and that itself being a test.
Yeah, I think in his view, a test that your God is real is when the God puts something in your path and whether you accept it or not. But he's on step B. I'm over here on A. How did you figure out the God is real in the first place? I think I said that like 5 times here.
Using demons, angels, and spirits to support your a God claim is like showing that 9/11 truthers are right because of chemtrails. It seems just like using a bad analogy to make his point. Like you're already 2 steps ahead and 3 steps deeper than where I even want this conversation to be in order for that to make sense.
Which I think shows how deep he is into the belief. If he can't, and this is probably a failure on my part of not recognizing it, but encouraging him to step even further away from it more objectively. Like, no, what I think is happening here is you're up here and I'm still down here, whether or not all this is even true. Can you meet, would you be willing to meet me down here to help me understand how you determine that all this is real or not? Because it seems like you're giving reasons that are based on the conclusion that your God is real. And I'm not there yet with you. Can you talk me through that?
And also in a perfect world, if you were just, cognizant of anything, you could have just mentioned the difference in what testing faith means. Right?
Yeah. Maybe it comes up here with the evolution talk. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Mark?
Well, I just think that the way I heard it is when he brought up evolution is sometimes when people bring up topics lately, for me, it's been quantum mechanics. When you want to say something that's going to bolster your point, and it's hard to argue without getting into it. It's like quantum mechanics. It can be anything. It can, yeah.
But see, here I think he brings up evolution to show that even you, as somebody who's not well versed in evolution, Anthony, are also making a decision. You're making a choice whether or not you're going to accept the consensus of science on that claim. So I think he's trying to show that we're on equal footing when it comes to deciding that these things are true. I think that's why I think that's the motivation for him surfacing evolution here.
Say it again. That you're both on equal footing for.
I think it comes up here, but I think he's trying to illustrate that you, Anthony, are also making a decision to believe something or not, just like I am about God and these angels and demons, but you're doing it for things like evolution.
So here's a question.
So we're on equal footing. I think that's how he's positioned.
Do you think that's because he was getting defensive? Does that sound like a defensive mood?
Normally I would say that is a defensive response, but he presents it in such a calm way that it doesn't come across that way. But it does seem like, I mean, let's flash back to the conversation that we had in front of the Alamo in 2014. I think he brings up evolution to show how foolish I am for accepting it. Like, can a bird turn into a dog? Do you remember that? Like, so I think that might be his sort of go-to to show that that you're just on unsteady footing as I am. Although I think he might argue that he's on better footing.
Yeah.
You can't sit down there and look at millions of years of evidence. You would have to have your faith, and you've heard this. I know you've heard this before. You'd have to have faith and trust in your instruments. The very same thing you're telling me about is something I'm guessing you do probably in the scientific community all the time. There has to reach a point you decide, this is what I am going to cling to. I'm going to hold to. I have to at least start out with this basic fact right here. And I'm not trying to spin it back.
I think those are good examples.
Hang on.
But
this is the scientific community all the time. There has to reach a point you decide, this is what I am going to cling to. I'm going to hold to. I have to at least start out with this basic fact right here. And
Start out, it's like a presupposition. It's like a foundational brute fact thing that he seems to tie to a choice, that it's really just about choosing to do it, maybe.
For science, I have to choose something like methodological naturalism. I have to choose that things are going to be consistent over time. There's a bunch of assumptions that I have to make in science, which prove out every time we look. But he sees them as an assumption and our bias against the supernatural.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I make that choice.
I think those are good examples, but I think in those instances,
I probably wouldn't say
that evolution is true or whatever would probably be able to identify what would change their view on it. What they could accept to show that my trust, my reliance on this set of tools, for example, was not warranted. And that's where I think the big disconnect is.
Okay. So
what was that? I'm sorry. That was
like if I saw a missing link, would that disprove my belief in a God or not?
Well, I think we talked about that already. Your view on evolution. Yeah. We don't need to go down that again.
And if my buddy who believes in Jesus or doesn't believe in Jesus gets shot and killed after I've been praying for him for a month, I wouldn't conclude that, oh, my God doesn't exist, because I would probably
there you go, Mark.
Maybe I just don't understand what's going on. I understand that they're XYZ.
Just so you know,
so there had to reach a point. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just so you know, I have to kind of wrap it up pretty soon. I've got another appointment, but I'm wondering.
Did you really have to wrap it up? Or you just
I did.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I would have stayed there for 3 hours with him if I could. I don't remember what I had, a dentist appointment or something. I don't know.
Because sometimes I will say, because if I have a person who's not being focused and I say, look, we're running out of time, to focus them. I mean, sometimes.
Somebody made a comment that they noticed that a lot of the SE conversations seem to get better in the second half when you end the talk.
Right.
And then like people sort of like, and I've even noticed that in these video reviews that we do, like there's an initial awkwardness and everyone's kind of tense. And then like, you break past some barrier and like everyone kind of, and then everything becomes better and clearer. And I think that's kind of what could happen, what actually happens here with Caleb. Like the interview's sort of over, we're winding down and we're really being a little bit more relaxed with our responses, and that a little bit more human, a little bit more personable. But yeah, I really did have to go. I don't remember what the appointment was.
I've got another appointment, but I'm wondering, do you think that do you have the ability to summarize what we've talked about with regards to faith and how and the role that it plays and my potential concerns with it?
I guess that verse in Proverbs is kind of, I guess I would say, is a big life verse. I mean, those two verses, that's been, I guess, the thing I've clung on to since I've been like in school. The Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Right, where you've identified it as trust and reliance on things. But I'm wondering, I'm sort of wondering how much of our discussion is actually stuck with you and what stands out with regards to our discussion about faith.
I actually kind of like that question, I have to say, but you could be putting somebody on the spot. They're not prepared, or, they might be afraid that they're going to look foolish because they can't repeat back. But I was really honestly wondering, because I felt like we kept going over faith and how do we test it? And I didn't want to end this really long talk that I had with him. This is probably like an hour into a talk. And I was like, well, if he walks away with anything, I hope it's this understanding about how I'm concerned about faith as a way of concluding that things are true. Did he at least get that part of it? I think that was my motive for going over that.
Yeah, you may never see him again. It would be nice to know that he at least understands how you feel about the unreliability of faith. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Stuck with you, and what stands out with regards to our discussion about faith? Can you verbalize my concern that I have with faith?
Because doesn't seem to be a good test to prove to me that there isn't a God.
He gets it.
Right.
That he doesn't exist.
Right. That the reasons that so if I have a personal experience and I take it on faith that was actually the God that did that experience, I can use faith to conclude that it was God, but I can't apply faith or use faith in a way that would demonstrate that it was not warranted, it was not justified, that my trust and reliance in it wasn't a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It only seems to work in one way. But when we use it for other things like walking across bridges or carrying around tasers, we do have a component to test the faith to see if it was warranted.
I would have faith and trust in my taser because I'm still carrying my taser.
Pardon me?
I still carry my taser. I have faith and trust in my taser.
Yeah.
I've had some bad times with it, but I do have faith and trust in my taser, and we'll see how it works out in the future. But I have faith and trust to pull it out again and to work.
Yeah.
I need to make a folder for biases for the banners. So it's like, confirmation bias all the way here.
This would be a good scene to stop on to talk about how we're standing, because this isn't my ideal setup to have somebody pinned against a metal railing where he can't really go anywhere and I'm right in front of him. Yeah. This was not my preferred setup. It just sort of happened, and I had already asked him to move over and walk with me, and can you move over here just a little bit more? And I was like, I've already asked him to move 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to position him one more time. So I just went with it. But people will look at that, and I've even seen a couple comments like, you really should stand differently, or of course, yes, do that. But it just kind of happened this way, and I opted just to let it go. But I guess he was sort of comfortable leaning up against it. It gave him some support.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I see another evidence of thought. No, not on that. Of thought terminating cliche when he, instead of staying on the meta level, he went down to the specific. He said, I do carry the taser. So I'm validating that I do test things in the real world in a proper way. And I'm also loyal to the taser idea, because he sees the taser idea as morally upstanding because it's less dangerous to the people he's dealing with. If he can use the taser rather than a lethal weapon, that's much better for the citizen, if you will. And so he comes along, he finds something rattling along in his head, and he reinforces that he has made the right choice regarding the taser. I see that as another one of those thought terminating cliches.
Yeah, that's a good point. The taser let him down in the past, yet he still holds on to it.
That would have been
interesting. Interesting. And you think about the God, right? Like, maybe the God belief has let me down in some cases, but I'm still holding on to it. I'm still going to pack that with me.
Yeah. As far as being up against a wall, while that might feel pinned up, I have some friends who much prefer to get PTSD about being jumped as a teenager, and they much prefer to have their back up against a wall so that nobody can sneak up behind them.
Huh.
They want to be facing the door. They want to have their back on a wall.
Considering his career, he may have felt comfortable in that position.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome back, Christopher. Sorry.
And we have a way to tell that taser failed you, that the faith that you put in that taser in that instance wasn't warranted. And yet when it comes to the God, it doesn't seem like we have that ability.
I would say it would just be a personal choice. And I guess we keep
personal choice. Personal choice. And this gets to threshold and standards and that type of thing. So yeah, maybe we could just wrap it up. I think that was a really good talk.
Do you need anything else?
No.
Transcripts, interpretive dance, anything.
It's really thinking about that. You want me to remind you about that? See?
You think so?
Do you want a water?
I'm good, thank you. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Hey, no problem at all. I am just honestly interested, and if I have to say I won't preach, I'll say I won't preach or anything like that. But what did get you to this?
He's not ready to go.
You said you grew up in a religious home kind of thing, and
What got me to what? Not believing in a God?
in the atheist thing. What led to your decisions kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was a skeptical kid. For the sake of my parents, I pretty much just pretended that I believed because I got the sense that it'd probably crush them.
Can we pause it?
Yeah.
You want to say something, Mark?
I just find when I do these kinds of interviews, and then when at the end it's over and the person starts asking you questions about how you think about things, I always take that as an extremely positive sign, because he really wants to know what you think. He values what you think, and he wants to know how on your journey you arrived where you did, and how that differs from where he arrived. And I always take that as a really positive thing, because I would say, I don't know how it is for you guys, but 9 out of 10 times or more, people have asked me one question throughout the whole process.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I looked at this as like I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I don't know where that's coming from. Did somebody change something? It's gone. I actually don't know how much we want to cover where I'm revealing all this stuff about me and then he reveals stuff about him personally. I'm completely fine ending it here if you want to. Is there any value in going further from this point? Yes, we do. Like, I love the fact that he didn't want to go right away. Although I did have an appointment, so that could that as a practitioner, there's a lot there. You can start becoming anxious if you feel like you're butting up against a deadline and you need to go, and you might be a little bit more abrupt in your responses and that type of thing. But I guess there probably was enough time in my schedule to allow this additional interaction.
Why do you think he was asking you all those questions? How about that?
I think he was genuinely interested in my stance on it. And then as it comes up later, he has a relative who also doesn't believe. So I think maybe he wanted to perhaps get a better sense of why aren't all these people also becoming as convinced as I am? What are they missing? Maybe. I really don't think that he was expressing pity for me or was attempting to convert me or to better understand me to convert me. I got the sense that he really did want to know where I stood.
Mm-hmm. No, he valued what you thought.
Yeah.
And usually when people are talking about a god or a religion, they kind of expect to be proselytized against, someone trying to make them believe something or force an opinion on them. And when you just want to walk away after asking a question, it says like, wait, well, let me ask you questions about why are you doing this if you're not going to proselytize to me about atheism or something.
Right. Exactly. Why aren't you pushing your worldview on me? Why would you want to leave it without telling me all the benefits of life without God? Maybe that was part of it.
Well, it's like you're violating the social contract, right? You're getting all these things from them and asking nothing in return. Like, hey, and okay, good. All right, thanks, bye. Right? That just like completely violates the tit for tat aspect of a social contract theory.
Yeah. This is actually a good learning point, I guess, again, for listeners that let's say you're an atheist, that you can reveal your position on where you stand on these claims and do it in a way that's honest and informative to the person who disagrees with you on it. And you don't have to get all upset about it and make your best case for atheism. You could just lay it all out there. Like, I just didn't find it convincing. And I've listened to all the reasons that people give. And I think I also try to use these interactions where I'm expressing things about myself to also harken back to the conversation. And maybe, like, I think at one point I say, like, I just realized that I can't take it on faith that there's any God, because faith to me is an unreliable way of concluding that things are true. So sometimes I intentionally try to work back aspects of the conversation in these little things. That's all I wanted to add.
Cool. Yeah, and it's basically kind of more of the same and more just wrapping up for the rest of the video. We've always done an hour and 20.
Yeah, hour and 20 minutes. That's good.
There's a few interesting comments. There's just one from Jason. Hey guys, I'm a pastor from Portland, or who has followed Anthony and Reid's YouTube channel for a long time. I'm fascinated by SC, even as I've evaluated my own beliefs.
Fantastic.
Discord.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, that's really cool to see.
Well, there's another one there. Oh, was that accidental?
There's another one by Jason.
Oh, he put a second one up there.
Well, there's another one. Where is it here? I've been moved to utilize the tools I've seen you interact with to evaluate my own belief systems. That's the goal. That's all what we want to do.
What else can you hear as a practitioner or a promoter of this method than that? This is exactly what we want to try to do. Somebody was saying, I wish there were more examples on your channel of you using this, Anthony, with atheists or using SE with the same passion. So an example of me using SE with an atheist is not good enough. You have to match the passion, the level of intensity and dedication that you did with the theist in order to make some people happy. But my answer
an exact matched group analysis.
Right. You should be just as focused and I want to say the word aggressive, but it's not the right word, that you were with that theist. You should use that same approach with the atheist. And I do try to, but I think that there are things in us because I agree with somebody. I think, and this just might be a character flaw on my part, but I suspect most people have this problem. It's hard to interrogate somebody's claim with the same vigor if you agree with them. I've found. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but I think the solution is people like Jason, who's a theist, who's learning SE. I think Jason would be a better SEer with an atheist than any of us, possibly.
Probably. Maybe.
Interesting.
I think this is Quinn. He had work. He wish he could have participated more. No worries, Quinn.
Oh, that was his handle? Okay.
Thanks,
God, it's so hard to keep track of all these people.
Oh, and Jason says, bro, you present yourself humbly and kindly, a safe person, if you will, that is capable of fielding such questions. Thanks, Jason.
Appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
Any last questions, chat people? Got 32 people watching. This is great. I liked it.
Very good.
If you want to practice, I'm speaking not to the people in the room here, but I'm speaking to the people on the other side of the camera. If you want to practice this SE with something where you do agree with it, that's easy. We use Steelman for that, where somebody stands in and will argue from whichever position you assign them to and give you the practice of an interlocutor whom you agree with, and then you can judge against. And because you don't know whether they agree, whether they actually hold that position or not, it really frees you up from the passion question.
Do you want to explain what the Discord server is? Because I think
sure. The Street Epistemology Discord server, I'm sure there'll be a link down in the doobly-doo, it's about 4,500 people that like to come in and play in Street Epistemology, and we have regular events and we have channels open for the specific practice, and a whole bunch of people willing to, under the practice SE tag, practice with you any time of day or night. So it's a cool place to go for learning how to do this thing, and I'm there a lot.
I can attest to it being a cool place to be. I've just recently gotten in there, and I've already had a bunch of conversations, both in text and one or two in voice chat, and it's a cool place. The conversations that I've had, even though we've had some disagreements, they weren't disagreeable. Everybody was practicing the method quite well. It was good.
Judgment free. Everyone's at different levels, and it's just to get better at the craft.
There's some really good
and
people.
And a shout out
there. Yeah, there's a screenshot.
A specific shout out to Luke, who's one of my favorite theist SE practitioners. They do exist.
They certainly do. I've got a video. I'm going to try to release it maybe January. It's with a young guy named Edward, who's a Christian, and he learns SE. He watches a couple of videos and he comes back and he takes my camera and my whiteboard and he does SE on the campus. And the very first person that walks by is an atheist. And it's not great SE, but it's hey, for somebody that just learned it, I thought he did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put all of our contact information, all of our channels in the video description. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating in this and watching one of my videos. I know it was kind of long and the audio wasn't the best, but I do appreciate your feedback on that. All right, until next time. We do this every Saturday, Reid, or Sunday?
Sunday, yeah, usually.
Okay. All right. So if you have a video that you would like to see us do a breakdown on, and I don't think that necessarily has to be a street epistemology video. If you have a conversation between a couple of people, right? Yeah. I would love to see us break down a video where maybe the conversation didn't go so well and we can give tips for people to point out things where they could have done better.
Yeah, it could be mainstream news or a podcast or a live stream somewhere, anything.
Yeah.
Video clip from the atheist experience.
Oh, that could be. Ooh.
Oh,
That might
those go off SE real quick.
They weave in and out, don't they? Like sometimes they hit the methodology, but then they go to argumentative or educating.
Yeah, I can tell they know what SE is, but they don't hold on to it.
Yeah. Okay, that wraps it up. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.